use the iPhone. I'm normally quite famous for reading my speaker notes off oversized A4 sheets, but given we don't have a lectern, I'm going to have to go digital, which is more sustainable, so it's good. So, I would also like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I would also like to acknowledge any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders that are here today. Thanks you all for coming this morning. I think, I'm so happy to see so many people to talk about a really important topic our industry faces, which is inclusive. Thank you for having me back. For some of you that were here last month, I did a very short cameo. And Nicole, thank you from Creative Mornings for inviting me to speak. Hopefully I impress or do something. Like Lover Down Under, I'm not sure I can follow that, but I'll give it a crack. So, yes, my name is Tara Mckenty. I'm a creative director at Google, and I'm also co-founder of Rare. We describe Rare as Google's diversity and inclusion operating system for industry, which has been established actually in collaboration with a lot of industry partners. I thought I'd use our time together to talk about the advantages of inclusion and discuss the power that we've found differences of perspective can have on our ability to innovate and produce original ideas and connect more meaningfully with the vast cross-section of society that makes up our audiences in advertising and the creative industries. But that's jumping to the punchline. For it to make sense, I should start at the beginning. Nicole's doing my slides today too, by the way. Great, can we switch to this amazing photograph taken from last Creative Mornings? Hey, so let's start with me. This is my son Tully. He also joined us last month. As mentioned, I work at Google. My role there is to come up with creative uses of our products and platforms for our clients across Asia. I've recently changed teams. Now my role is to come up with creative uses of our products and platforms for Google. So big change there. I've worked in the creative and technology industry for over 15 years. Just a caveat, I do not describe myself as a digital ninja or a futurist. I don't understand what either of those roles are. I actually started my career in craft and design as a pretty average designer. I then moved on to become a sufficient art director. And now I'd call myself a pretty good problem solver and innovator. And I'm obviously clearly quite self-deprecating, so I hope you enjoy that humour throughout the morning. The reason why I'm a good problem solver, I believe, is because I bring diversity of perspective to two industries that have historically lacked it. My superpower throughout my career has been the fact that I'm different. You're doing such a good job, Nicole. So now that we've established that I'm average, sufficient, and pretty good, I wanted to share with you 3 pieces of work where I believe that the diversity of perspective that I've brought to the teams and to the projects has led to some pretty interesting, creative and innovative results. So as mentioned in my very well articulated bio by Nicole, this piece of work is a children's book called Penny the Pirate. I wanted to share this piece because Penny is an example of where my own background of being raised by a single mother led me to the insight that helped 20% of Australian high schoolers that went throughout high school with undetected eye issues that affected their learning. And basically the insight I had was that growing up with 2 older brothers and a single mum, she couldn't get us through the supermarket as a solo mum with 3 children, let alone book us into a optometrist, drive us all to the optometrist and then put us through a pretty scary eye test. Based off this insight, myself and the team at Saatchi created Penny the Pirate, a children's book that tested the eyesight of children at home by simply reading your child a delightful children's book. This went on, as mentioned, to be the Walk 100 most effective campaign in the world. And we also used it in Indigenous communities to test and use as an eye tool for other children outside of cities as well. So here's more about the project.
Children don't like visiting scary optometrists, and bringing them in wasn't a priority for parents, which is why 1 in 6 children have a vision problem, and for over half, it's undetected. So eye care provider OPSM created Penny the Pirate. Available as a book and an app, Penny is the first medical tool that helps mums test their children's vision as they read them a bedtime story. Because there wasn't a standard eye screening process for children, we had to start from scratch. So we brought the University of Melbourne together with children's illustrator and author Kevin Waldron to turn eye tests into a story that would be engaging for children. Penny the Pirate follows the journey of a young girl as she tries to become the captain of the mighty Pickle. She has to plunder treasure, read the captain's log, and spot sails in the distance to prove she's a worthy leader of this brutish bunch of pirates. This story helped parents get a better understanding of their child's eye health. And when they check their children's results online, if needed, they could book an OPSM eye test immediately. Penny was launched with TV and across 200 stores. But the most effective channel has been mums themselves. Using our Pass It On program, we encourage them to share their book with others. So one book helps many. Penny the Pirate has also become an invaluable tool for OPSM's charity OneSight, helping them test more eyes than ever in remote areas of Australia because it's more efficient, accurate and engaging than previous methods. Penny is on track to give 300,000 children an eye test, which has already seen a 188% increase in kids' eyewear sales since launch. We've reached #1 health app in the App Store. And by creating Penny the Pirate, OPSM has created a new standard in the screening of children's eyes. But most importantly, kids are getting an eye test without even realising it.
So the next project I wanted to share is Kicksticks. Kicksticks is a rudimental prototype of an invisible drum kit. So now I want to take you on a journey. Think back to the late 90s, where Bart Simpson was every adolescent's role model, and the saxophone was a desirable instrument to play thanks to the influence of his sister Lisa. So during this time where Simpsons was reigning all, I was a young adolescent growing up in a very small coastal town in New Zealand called Nungaru, where opportunity, there wasn't much opportunity, to be honest. So instruments like saxophones, drums, anything beyond a recorder really wasn't available to the school that I went to or the students that attended. So this insight and I guess this personal experience that I had to draw on led me to try and create a tool that could democratize music. So Kicksticks essentially, I wanted to make drums, which is ordinarily an expensive piece of kit, available to everyone. The hope for Kicksticks is that we can get technology to a point where it's working well enough that we can turn this into a mass consumer product and that it becomes available for everyone. This video is an articulation of the project. I'm enjoying all of this clapping. So I've told you that I'm looking at my speaker notes, but I'm actually just scrolling through Lover Down Under's Instagram. Just kidding. The next piece of work I want to share with you is Kupu. Kupu is a project where I worked with a truly diverse team to create it. I believe that as creatives, we often will start a project and we look at our audience. Normally they're between 20 and 40, or they're millennials, one or the other. And we're like, great, I'm going to design this for that audience. And being a minority myself, I think when someone creates a product or an ad and it doesn't resonate with you and that particular community hasn't been involved in the design process, you can often get it so wrong. So this has kind of led me to the belief that whenever we create something with a specific community, we should be designing with that community, not for. So Kupu is an example of when we designed an app to help retain and promote language and teach language for Māori people with Māori people. Kupu uses Google's Cloud Vision API to identify what's in an image, and then it translates it into Te Reo Māori. When Māori trusted us with their language, it was our responsibility to make sure we treated their culture with the utmost respect. So another thing that I think we do in the creative industries is we have to work to these ridiculous deadlines as well. So during the process with Kupu, we had to really slow down, and we worked with the iwi and Māori elders. We listened to everything that they said, and we iterated and iterated our app and refined it. And the project became better for it. It took 2 years to make, but we got there, and we're very happy with the result. In the first week of launching, our app was the most downloaded app in New Zealand. It outperformed Netflix, Spotify, and even YouTube. This is a video that explains how Kupu works.
Kia ora. These little things have changed the world. They let me talk to my family when I'm on the road and find out almost anything with just a tap. But all of this technology and access to information isn't without its sacrifices. The globalization of communication plays a big role in shrinking our native languages. Did you know that a language dies on average every 14 days? They reckon that by the turn of the century, more than half of the world's 7,000 languages may be lost. Here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, that's a real worry. Our native language, Te Reo Māori, is under pressure, and the more help we can give it, the better. Ironically, that's where this can actually help. Kupu is an app that combines 2 Google platforms in a whole new way to help people learn Te Reo Māori. Kita, that's the Māori translation for guitar.
We know that in children, learning is greatly enhanced by engagement and context. Seeing an object in relation to the language that they're trying to learn and understand greatly enhances their ability to retain that information.
Kupu uses Google's Cloud Vision API to recognize images and Google Translate to give me the Te Reo Māori translation. The app serves up the most likely translation, then 4 more options. It was developed here in New Zealand with a Māori language expert along with a group of Māori consultants and launches in September for Māori Language Week. But the coolest thing is that we're open sourcing the software to help support other endangered languages all over the world. It's not only our language that we keep from being lost when we pass them on, it's our identities. Kupu. Take a photo, learn a language.
Keep it coming. So now you've seen my average, sufficient, sometimes pretty good work, I wanted to move on to my loneliness. During my career, I've often been the only female in the creative department in almost every role. That's where you go, oh. Thank you. I've also often been the only gay in the village. And all of my role models, my creative directors, executive creative directors, and chief creative officers have all been male. Until this year, actually, I'm working for my first female creative leader. You! So let's forget the gay for now and focus on gender imbalance, because it's all a topic that we're familiar with. And we'll start there. It's not news to any of you. And I suppose in comparison to other minority groups, females are pretty well represented, right? Hey. Early on in my career, sorry, I'm just having a bunch of fun up here by myself. Nicole occasionally joins in. Early on in my career, I put it down to a lack of interest from women to work in advertising because it's a hard slog. Anyone that's worked in our industry knows this. I thought perhaps they preferred working in account service and not the creative department. I found myself in an industry with little to no role models that looked like me, talked like me, or walked like me. And then the ones I did come across, the amazing female talent that I did have the pleasure of working with, they would eventually change industries, drop out, or they wouldn't return after having children. So lonely. And I realised it wasn't that they didn't want to do the job, it wasn't that they didn't want to be creative or come up with ideas. It was because they felt different, they were treated differently, and it didn't feel that good. Oh, Dominic, you're right, the one before. I tricked you because they're both green slides, so it's confusing. A dominant culture is a cultural practice that is dominant within a particular political, social, or economic entity in which multiple cultures are present. What I realised is that I was working in what's called a dominant culture. And these exist in all industries. In advertising, the dominant culture happens to be, historically as white, male, straight, middle to upper class, which meant I was on the outer, but so are a lot of others. And it was this realisation that led me to think it's not just women facing bias, marginalisation, under-promotion, under-mentoring and underpayment. This is a much wider issue, one that spans race, religion, sexuality, class, ability and neurodiversity. So that was the motivator and I guess the turning point that helped me co-found the program RARE.
Tara and I actually met on the jury at D&AD in 2016. We judged direct together. To meet another chick that's working in Australia as a CD is kind of rare. You know, I think there's a lot of really great initiatives in the industry already. Things like quotas are helping, but not fast enough. And we're losing diverse talent faster than we can attract them. I called Tara, I'm like, enough is enough, we need to do something about this.
We want to turn RARE into a platform that continuously connects and supports the industry's rare talent, to give diversity a more united and louder voice within our industry.
I think a key thing for the people who are here is to maintain the network that this is the beginning of, to make this a movement.
You don't just get there under your own steam, but you work with other people. You've got to forge those links and engage and reciprocate and make them part of your life.
People have felt entitled who are not necessarily entitled, and you can feel entitled too.
There was a point of view, and that point of view was becoming authority.
How do you see it through when there's opposing forces? I don't know, you got to just do it, right? I mean, twice I've been on national television apologizing in 9 p.m. news for things that I didn't ask for permission and did, and yet we did it, and I never told the agency, don't do it.
If I had one message for the industry, it would be just sort your shit out. Diversity makes better work. It just has to happen.
The ladies' toilets, I mean, I could probably have a party there for 4 days and no one would come in.
We're all the black people. I always come to these types of events, and I do it because hopefully somebody will see me, and then when somebody like me, male or female, comes up, and they are less afraid of hiring somebody that doesn't look like them, talk like them, act like them, and not only not afraid, but embrace it because they know it's going to make the creative work better.
Everyone stand up for 1 second, go for it. We'll stretch it out, and we'll get the beers out, we'll be fine. like fearless authenticity with who you are and what you believe is probably one of the most powerful things that I've experienced ever. It's a weird perspective of risk now because every day I'd pretty much like almost die.
Identity is everything, and I think it's something that everybody should explore. If we just focus on that media and that push for white supremacy, it's going to be, you know, a miserable place. But I have hope because there's a lot of great people in the world, and we've got a room full of them here today.
Where we're going to end up is with the outline for a personal learning plan.
One lesson that I would hope that all of the rare talent here would take away is that the more that they can combine their creativity and their systematic thinking about how to take action for themselves in ways that improve their businesses, improve their industries, improve their communities, I think that would be my hope.
My name is Varushka Darling, and I'm going to be the auctioneer here. You know, we're raising money here today to send people to, you know, the National Arts School on a scholarship to really give their career a kickstart.
160, will you do 170, sir? I'm sure you've got an extra 10 hiding in that beard. Amazing, that's gorgeous.
I said, you know, how do you feel about being, you know, sort of an alumni for this program? And they were just really blown away about how they could actually participate and contribute. What you've created here and what the team have created today and over the last few days, it's really a movement, and I think that's really powerful.
In the industry, there are always talks about like creative thinking, coming up with big ideas, winning awards and things like that, but nothing's ever been targeted specifically towards unrepresented groups or underrepresented groups.
It's really important to get together and kind of be inspired and talk to people who are like-minded.
We don't get to be mediocre at our jobs. We always have to excel in order to be considered equal to anyone. So it's nice to see people who aren't necessarily classified as a minority also working towards this cause, because it needs everybody.
I thought it was great to open the discussion, to bring in more tangible actions.
I'm even thinking of like, okay, how can I take some of these learnings and share it with my circle of people that I know back home?
I've just been so inspired by the attendees, and hopefully their brain hurts. They're going to go home and put in place some of the things they've learned, and we just keep it going. So what you saw there, yes. I'm just going to try keep doing good things so I can come back here and speak and get claps. So what you saw here is the case study to our first masterclass, which we actually ran in Sydney 2 years ago at the Glue Society. We've since run masterclasses in different parts of the world, including London at D&AD. We have 10 events on this year globally, which is pretty exciting for us, and we're expanding. We've launched an internship program. We've kind of extended our scholarship and grants program, and we're also launching a thing called Rare Exec, which is a corporate clinic which we're piloting in July later this year. So we now have a team of 5 working on this, and we're scaling to try and have more impact and have real pivotal change on the industry. We also have over 50 industry partners now that support the initiative. Shameless plug. Socials will be at the end, don't worry. So what's been really interesting to me is that as we expand the masterclass to other programs, such as the Rare Exec that I mentioned, is the argument for more inclusive cultures in our industry is actually more than just ethical. Of course, when we founded the first masterclass, we did that out of a need to do good and to support the unsupported. But the corporate clinics are founded on something much different. They're actually founded on a business need, a need to relate to our customers and to continue to evolve as an industry. And that's not just my theory. The consequences of allowing dominant cultures to exist are playing out right now. 72% of people feel that most advertising does not reflect the world around them. 63% claim they don't see themselves represented in advertising, and 60% say they don't see their community, their friends, their families or acquaintances accurately represented in the work that we're creating for them. I am just going to shamelessly name drop, but I was recently talking to Michael Goff, who's the VP of Design for Uber. Before Michael was at Uber, he was at Microsoft. Before Michael was at Microsoft, he was at Adobe, creating the future of interfaces that every designer in this room would be very familiar with. So he's kind of a big deal, and I was super nervous when I was talking to him because of just the amazing work that he's done. And through this conversation, I was actually briefing him on our rare Masterclass that's coming up at Sydney at Semi-Permanent. And so there was a bit of general banter, and then he just dropped this: you can only innovate for yourself. And it stuck with me. It's really simple. There's nothing complex about it, but it's true. You can't, to truly innovate for an audience, you need to understand them completely. And unless they're involved in the design process, no one's going to be able to innovate as well as that particular audience or demographic or community. This is an issue for our industry. We're not being as effective as we should be, nor are we being socially responsible for the work we're creating. But you can't blame the creators. They have implicit bias. We all do. It's not our fault. It's the consequence of something really delightful. It's a consequence of our humanness. It's human to make what you know. The problem, rather, is that dominant cultures are leading us to draw from only one perspective. On the flip side, there's always a flip side. I thought it was pretty positive, but anyway. When you do have a rich cross-section of perspectives at play, it results in work we could all be proud of if we made it. White & Kennedy's mantra, the famous advertising agency headed up by Susan Hoffman, Dan Wyden and Colleen DeCourcy, based out of Portland, their hiring mantra is to hire wrong. This culture cultivates a culture, where the misfits of the world are encouraged to be exactly who they are. These misfits are producing work like this.
If we show emotion, we're called dramatic. If we want to play against men, we're nuts. And if we dream of equal opportunity, delusional. When we stand for something, we're unhinged.
It's super, it's gonna need to calm down.
When we're too good, there's something wrong with us. And if we get angry, we're hysterical, irrational, or just being crazy. But a woman running a marathon was crazy.
Officials tried to pull her off the course.
A woman boxing was crazy. A woman dunking? Crazy. Coaching an NBA team? Crazy. A woman competing in a hit job, changing her sport, landing a double cork 1080? Or winning 23 Grand Slams, having a baby, and then coming back for more? Crazy, 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 and crazy. So if they want to call you crazy, fine. Show them what crazy can do.
I think that one gets a clap. I didn't do that, but how good is that? I think for any female here that plays sport, you never see women represented in sport like that. So it's refreshing, and it's my favourite piece of communication for this year, I think. Okay. My down under Instagram feeds kind of give me some grief. So here we go. The accelerometer in my phone has obviously been dropped a few too many times. So, diversity of perspective. It also means you avoid stereotyping, like the piece we just saw. And you're able to make the kind of work that the world can relate to, which is pretty awesome results on sales at the other end, which has some pretty awesome results on sales. In a recent study, work that has greater gender balance and is free of stereotype resulted in 26% better purchase intent among consumers and 45% among women. When you consider the incredible effect diversity can have on both the creative work and the bottom line, you start to see difference as a commodity. something protected, embraced, and expressed. And I'm not just talking about traditional differences, the kind we can label. The potential to tap into differences is so much broader than that. Through our work at RARE, we've identified that diversity is two-dimensional. There's two kinds. There's inherent diversity, which is what you're born with, and then there's acquired diversity. Acquired diversity are the things that you pick up throughout your life that shape and shift your perspective on the world. The power of each difference might not be obvious when I list it out like this, so I thought I'd give you a couple of examples. One of my differences in a team, as I've explained, is that I'm female. 80% of purchase decisions are made by women. I understand what it's like to be a woman, so it's pretty important to have that perspective in the room, right? Let me give you another example of a difference I bring to the table. I'm actually intersectional. I have multiple differences of perspective I bring to the table, but I'm just going to focus on two for you today. Sexuality is another difference of perspective I bring. What's interesting about the LGBTQ plus community is that we out-earn and we outspend our straight counterparts by more than double. It's massive, right? So it's pretty important to have the rainbow dollar perspective in the room, I'd say. And now I'm just going to make your brain bleed because it's early in the morning and you haven't had a fresh coffee for at least the 35 minutes I've been speaking for so far. So the last example I want to give you is actually, it can be acquired and it can be inherent, and that's people living with a disability. So people living with a disability, this community, brands don't speak to them. Very little brands do. No one's communicating to them. Very little brands are making products for them. They're an $8 trillion market and they're being ignored. Why? So, any difference you bring is a massive business advantage. And when we embrace what makes us different and what makes others different, we cultivate a more inclusive, it was the theme, I just had to hold on it. We cultivate a more inclusive culture. I also have to say dragon, just to make Bill's illustration make sense, so. Dragon. We cultivate a more inclusive dragon culture. We produce more insightful dragon work. Sorry. And we're able to produce original and more innovative ideas and advance ourselves and as an industry. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from today, it's dragon. Is I want you to think about what is your difference. Like, don't panic if you're a white, straight, middle to upper class male sitting in the audience. There's something that's different about you, I know it. You've just got to find it. And yeah, so that's basically the main question I have for you is what makes you different. Think about it, bring it to work. Share it with others, celebrate it, don't suppress it, don't hide it, don't conform. And if you are a white, middle class male sitting in the audience and you are rare, or you do have something that's different about you, or you are a person of minority sitting in the audience, or you just believe you have a rare mind, and you're looking for a community of like-minded people, you'd like to learn MBA-level leadership skills, tools, and be inspired by an amazing lineup of diverse practitioners, such as Michael Goff, the VP of Uber, such as Keela Kennelly, the big wave surfer who fought for equal pay in professional surfing and got it. And also people like Alma Harrell, who's an amazing female director, featured at Sundance, and also the founder of Free the Bid. So, and finally, for those of you who might just be entering the industry, we also have an internship program that is on our website if you go to rare-sid.com, and we're offering top 3-month paid internships at amazing creative shops like the Glue Society, like Us Too, like RGA, Special Group, and Clemenger BBDO. So they're also available online for you to have a look, read through the role description, and then apply if it's something that you're interested in. And that's it. We also have socials. Please feel free to follow us if you want to find out more about the program. And I think now we've got some time for questions. Thanks for having me. Okay. That was fucking great. Wow, one more round of applause for Tara. That was so great. Thank you. So yeah, we have time for Q&A. So have a quick think if you've got some questions. And I need to have a quick look and see if I have some stream time socks in my bag. If I do, the first 3 people to ask questions will get some really cool socks. So, who has a question for Tara? 1, 2. Okay, so you 2, if I have socks, you'll get them. And so how this is going to work is, Tara, I'll give you the mic, and if you just repeat the question, that would be awesome. So we'll have 1, 2, and then 3, because you want more time. All right, go for it.
Hi. Thank you. That was great.
No worries.
I guess what I'm kind of asking is, you talk a lot about inclusivity and like the rare and bringing people into the fold. Have you noticed any kind of effort to change the way old white men communicate? And is there like are you looking on the other side of the coin, like change the way they communicate? Because I find a lot of my mates that are women in the industry, in any kind of industry, are being talked over and kind
Mansplained?
Yeah, mansplained.
So the question was, we do a lot to support people coming into the industry. Are we doing anything to change attitudes of existing talents, older white guys that are in leadership positions?
Yeah, and their communication.
And the way that they communicate. So the programs that we do actually, the Masterclasses are MBA level content. So they're designed to get creative minorities into leadership positions so eventually they can be advocates and lead from top down. So replace once the older generation moves on to retirement, our fresh, diverse talent will come in and we'll have a very different leadership style. Our internship program and our grants and scholarship is to get new talent in, so we're trying to sandwich the industry. But exactly to your point, we developed a program called Rare Exec, which we're piloting in Tokyo and New York this year. And what Rare Exec does is to change the attitudes of some of the more traditional people that work in the industry. We wanted, and I guess too, like, I feel, and I know this is going to sound counterintuitive, but I feel like white males feel marginalised by the conversation of diversity because often they're made to feel like they're part of the problem when actually they're the solution because they are in these positions of power where they can change the industry, so they need to care about diversity. So what Rare Exec is we actually go in and we show business leaders how running diverse businesses and having inclusive cultures can actually make their businesses more profitable. So we use business examples like Patagonia, for example, is a great company that does that. We've got the ex-CMO of ASOP coming up to Tokyo to talk about how she did that when she was launching that brand globally. And then we also have the ex-CMO of a TV channel from London, Channel 4, who did this amazing piece called We Are the Superhumans for the Paralympics. And after he launched that piece for the Paralympics, he then increased his staff to 11% of people living with a disability. So the point of that program, we absolutely saw the need. It's like, how can we change these kind of ingrained behaviours now? And we can do it by showing that diversity and inclusion equals money, which it does. So that whole part of Rare is being designed and launched this year to solve that problem. We also do, we're also launching another program and award shows this year, and we're launching it at DNAD and then Cannes, piloting at Cannes, called Rare Juries, where we go in and we run anti-bias training for judges. So now we're starting to have more gender equal representation in jury rooms. There's still things like cultural nuances that get missed and work doesn't get awarded fairly. Often, even though we have the diverse talent in the room, they're not given the same space to kind of speak freely and have their opinions heard. So we're actually also developing a program where we can help creative work have the best chance of winning fairly. So personally, I have done a few projects for unconscious bias, which I think is more so what you're asking. A few years ago, I worked with the Diversity Council of Australia and created a Chrome extension where when you typed an email that contained unconscious bias, we'd highlight the bias in purple, give you the origin of the bias, and then would give you 5 options to autocorrect. So if you said, for example, something like, I don't want to say this on film, if you said my boss is a ball breaker, we'd highlight ball breaker in purple, and would tell you where that came from, and then we'd give you 5 options that might be like, my boss is strong-willed, my boss is confident, and replace them with language you should be using. So unconscious bias is absolutely something that affects minorities in the workplace, because it affects them not in one big go, but it just wears you down. So it's definitely something that we are passionate about solving too. And we've got a few programs, but nothing specifically just for the workplace. Yes?
My question is more advertising specific. Your work looks like very meaningful and very impactful for I guess typically sometimes with people in our industries, we're part of accounts that the clients aren't necessarily giving us those opportunities to do meaningful work for smaller niches and audiences, or bigger but very niche targeted. I just thought it would be great to get your advice in terms of how you were able to maneuver your career so that you could produce work like that, and give any advice for anyone who kind of doesn't want to get lost in the advertising kind of machine.
Sure.
Just fitting in a
Yeah. I just showed you the good stuff. Like, I've got so much bad advertising that you haven't seen today.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, of course. The question was, how can you not get stuck in, I guess, the advertising machine and maneuver to get kind of good, meaningful work through and not get bogged down in the day-to-day briefs, and then potentially work with clients to get great ideas across the line, or pretty good ideas. So those 3 pieces of work that you saw today are all proactive. So they didn't come from a brief, is the first thing to note. There's the classic ratio in advertising that it's 80-20. 80% pays the bills, 20% is what you do for awards and so forth. I'd love to claim Penny the Pirate as just an idea I had and went in and said, let's do this. But I actually was working with a really amazing account service team who had the foresight 5 years ago now to ask the client to set aside an innovation budget. So that piece of work actually came out of a brainstorm with a client in the room where they gave us all of their problems, one of it being 20% of Australian high schools live with undetected eye issues. And then that idea was able to live in the world because they'd set this proactive budget aside, which was pretty progressive 5 years ago. So that's how that piece of work got through. Kupu came out of a design sprint that we ran with Colenso and the client again. But I mean, the one common thread on getting any great piece of work through is having a great relationship with the client. So each one of those pieces of work, we've had an amazing relationship with the client, either a personal relationship, we've worked with them before. With OPSM, I did a 5-location shoot with the client before they had the confidence to buy that piece of work. I think when you endeavour on an idea that's dangerous and brave and scary, you need to believe in the people that you're making it for. So that's how I believe great work gets made. And I think it's tricky because it's hard. Like, you've got to do the stuff that pays the bill and the hardest thing is actually just setting the time aside to do the stuff that you really believe in. But I think when you land on a great idea that excites you, it's going to excite other people. My personal strategy around how I get ideas through is gentle, constant pressure or persistence with a smile. So basically, I'm just really obnoxious until they just give in, and then they say yes. So that's also a strategy.
It is 10, so we'll just have one last very quick question because we know you can be fast.
Okay.
So, and then that'll be it. So
it's more just back on the people that you get to work with, like, because inclusion is like such a massive thing. I'm curious about the capacity in which like these groups that you're approaching actually contribute to the projects, because obviously they're not all like marketing and advertising advisors. they're more, or I'm wondering like.
What's a marketing and advertising advisor?
Well, they don't have the strict abilities in like producing content like that. Like with the Kupu thing, how you approached the community and you collaborated on that. Like, in what capacity do they kind of inform the final product?
Okay, that's a good question. So, question was, when creating this work and the communities we're engaging with, how much do they inform the final product and influence what it is, given that they may not have the same expertise in marketing and advertising that we might? So Kupu, I'll use that as an example. And basically, we started working on the project. I was working with a really amazing creative director who actually had 2 daughters that are Māori, and he is quite fluent in reo, in te reo Māori. So we kind of had this handshake at the start of the project that we would protect and keep the integrity of the project as we moved forward with it, because it would pull in lots of different teams. It was going to become quite a big project, and we both kind of had this understanding that we would make sure that we were protecting the culture that we were having to borrow from and use and input to create the tool. We ended up partnering with Te Aka Dictionary, who is an organisation in New Zealand that have a fantastic library, te reo Māori library, but they also have all of the pronunciations that you can hear when you go through the app. We also worked with a Māori ambassador for Spark, the telecommunications company we worked with. So Lisa sat in every single one of our meetings. To give you context of how integrated that person was, so Lisa would take early prototypes, she'd go out to different maraes, she'd sit down with iwi and Māori elders, and she'd test it with them. They'd tell us it wasn't good enough, because it wasn't, and we'd go back and make it better. She'd go back out, and then we did that until the community was happy with how the tool worked, which is not something you would normally do. We had an early version, this prototype, working within the first 3 months of coming up with the idea, but we didn't launch it until 2 years later, to give you context. When I was going back home to New Zealand and sitting in these meetings, 50% of the meeting was actually spoken in te reo Māori. So it was a very humbling and amazing experience to do this project. And to answer your question, the community influenced the whole thing. We just ended up becoming almost like the, like the makers or the technical people to build this. So we came to them with the idea, and then it became their idea, and we just helped them make it in the end, is how that dynamic shifted. Can we have one more question from one of the girls? I just feel like we've had like a short. Is there any?
Yeah, if anyone is like super like dying to leave, that you have to just get up really quickly, but otherwise we'll have one more question. Go for it.
Yes, in the back.
It's a very raw question, but I guess I'm just kind of thinking about like, we've got the Extinction Rebellion happening in the UK. Recently we had a lovely vegan protesters in Melbourne. How do we talk about more confronting topics in the mainstream? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. Question was, how do we talk about more confronting topics as mainstream? Oh gosh, I wish I hadn't have asked for that last question. We had 3 guys, and I was like, anyway. I think I would argue that the Whiting and Kennedy's piece I shared with you, Celebrate the I would argue that that's confronting. Seeing, I wouldn't say, and I guess to answer your question is, I think it's not confronting to the people that it affects. I think it's confronting to the mainstream. So I think when you have people that aren't mainstream creating the work, it's not going to be confronting. And I know that's a really weird way to answer that question, but I think when some of these more powerful pieces that talk about sensitive topics surface, they resonate with the communities that's been affected by these issues. They don't make them feel uncomfortable. They make the audience or the people, the community that are creating these problems feel uncomfortable, right? So who cares? Would be, I think that's a good thing. I think without being uncomfortable, there isn't progress. So, yeah, we should all be very uncomfortable. Awesome.
All right, guys, on that note, give Tara a huge round of applause.